Lynn Keenan.
Yes. Amy Sislow.
Yes.
Sue Gibson. Starbucks, they supplied us with infinite amount of coffee.
Yes.
It woke me up this morning. It was necessary, let me tell you, to get my day started. Thank you, Starbucks.
Yes. Arliss Litigation Services.
Yes, who provided some of the cameras and some of the equipment that we're using. The same with St. Louis University, donated some of the cameras for our use for this 24-hour telethon.
You have helped keep us up and running, so thank you so
Yes.
much.
We just want to thank all our sponsors.
S.A. Billings from the St. Louis Gender Foundation made a generous $1,000 donation. Jason Heiser made a generous $500 donation. Just so much loving, right?
Yes.
And holding the space for all these folks.
And a person named Clayton L. made two $500 donations.
Two?
Yes, two. But he was later he was earlier in the telethon.
Okay.
So we want to thank him.
And that brings me to, there was a human who, when we kick-started on Giving Tuesday, where we raised $2,000, one human donated $1,000, and I Facebook messaged him, and I'm like, can I give you a shout out on the telethon? And so I'm gonna bring it real for a second. And he was like, he's like, no, I had lost a friend to suicide over the last year, and I just want you to hold some space for folks who are struggling in that way, and encourage them to get support in whatever way might feel good. So thank you for your $1,000 donation, and we're holding space and doing what you asked. We we experienced that as a community over the summer, and so like we're having a good time, and it's fun and games. And again, Metro Trans Umbrella Group can be a life-saving place for folks. So so yeah, holding some space for that, right? Okay.
So I guess it's time to mosey on over.
Yep, I got to take off the sweater.
You gotta
I'm
take off the
burning
sweater.
up. I'm
And
burning
before
up.
we move over, on a personal note, a lot of people have texted me about how am I doing. Because,
Okay.
I've
You're
had
right.
I've had some health issues.
And then here you are.
Here I am.
Yes.
I've taken my medication. I did my blood pressure. Everything's fine, and I'm getting plenty of rest. And everyone here at the telethon's been making sure I had plenty of water and stay hydrated. So I'm doing good. I'm hanging there for the long run.
All right.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. But what would make me real feely good? If we reach $24,000.
Yeah,
That would make me feel wonderful.
Yes.
Yes.
Now
So we're gonna
we get to
mosey.
do our coffee talk.
Coffee talk.
Coffee talk. And
talk.
we have two guests this time for coffee talk.
Okay, go take your sweater off.
All right,
We'll walk over here.
Oh, the sound. We got a theme show.
We got
Theme song.
theme music. All right. So today's show ain't got nothing on us.
Yay.
Yes. Come on. We're gonna go over here.
I need a beverage. Ooh, sorry.
What do you want to say? I don't know. Okay.
I should drink water.
Yes.
Toit.
We have a theme song and everything. Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey.
This looks like the good guest seat, right?
Yeah,
I think that
Like this, not too. I mean,
comfy, that mustard yellow that we all love. Soft velvet. It doesn't get classier than that,
I
right?
think the sad thing is my family had all these chairs when I was growing up.
But they were covered in plastic, right?
No, we were uppity. We didn't cover nothing. We knew better because Georgia was not playing. You don't get no oil sheen or your dirty clothes or nothing on the furniture.
okay.
Yes, because we were brought up right. But no, it was, when I walked in and saw these chairs, I went, oh, Lord. They have been to 7600 Brooklyn Avenue in Kansas City, Missouri, and brought these chairs on down here.
They needed you walk down memory lane.
Ooh, it took me way down memory lane. It took me how bad I used to be and how many times I got a spanking on these chairs. It's okay. It's all about the love. It's very family. It's very family. That's what it's about, being very family.
Yeah.
So what are we going to talk about today?
I had kind of a serious thing I wanted to talk about.
Let's talk serious.
So it's a concept. And you know what? I think we could invite our guest, one of them, Mr. Stephen Holdsworth, up, because I'm interested to hear, maybe he might have some insight on this.
Okay, come on up, Stephen. Stephen Holdsworth.
Welcome, Stephen Holdsworth.
Probably just one. Thank you. Oh,
Hi, Stephen. How
Hey,
you doing?
Stephen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
recorded one? Or?
$24,000.
$24,000.
Call now. Then now. Do whatever you need to do. Get that money in there. All right, that's it.
We needed to plug that. It's always
Yes.
important to plug that.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
How you feeling, Stephen?
Yeah.
I am feeling great, and I want you to know there are very few things that would get me up at 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning. Very, very few. And this was one of them.
Oh, thank
So glad to be
you.
here.
We're glad to have you here.
We recently partnered with Stephen and Art House for a documentation clinic that was super successful. The hostess with the mostest. It was lovely. It was great to be in your space and reaching out to folks in that neck of the woods, right? And just taking up some
Wonderful.
space. Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Well, we loved having you. It was such a glorious day, and the thing that struck me most was the families that would come in.
Yeah.
And so, like parents bringing their kids in who were transitioning and needed to get that paperwork rolling, and the whole family would come. So it was the parents, the siblings, everybody came, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful day.
Yeah, it was really good. It felt really good. So a topic that I had thought about, and I read it on the Facebooks, and so I'm always trying, what are the NCCJ? You're a teacher and a learner, and I'm a teacher and a learner, and I'm learning, and I'm learning about how I participate in my own oppression, okay? And so I heard a concept that I'd never heard of before called a dog whistle. And so maybe, have you heard this?
Oh, yeah.
Could you explain what a dog whistle is?
Well, it's basically using a phrase that when some people hear it, it'll be like, oh, that's normal. That's just a phrase. That doesn't mean anything. And when other people hear it, they're like, yes, that tells me that person agrees with my hate. And so I can support them because they are telling me they hate the same people I hate by using that particular language or phrasing or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, so I heard, the way I read about it, it was through an anti-Semitic way, and how people use these dog whistles to sort of, like, I'm anti-Semitic over here, I'm
Right.
going to say these. So this was in a different way, and it was more of what I felt like was a micro way, because I don't know that I think that we're evolving so much with our language. What it came to was preferred pronoun. And so in around 2016, I drew a line in my own education and my own way that I expressed, and I said, it's no longer preferred, it's my pronoun.
That's right.
Right? But I felt like before 2016, when I awoke to preferred just to be pronoun, I felt like that was so powerful to say preferred pronoun. Like, wow. Preferred pronoun? You're asking me my preferred pronoun? That feels really good. And I'm like, don't ask me my preferred pronoun. I'm a he, him, right? So then it led to, on a different, deeper level, I think, I always say when I'm doing any sort of thing, I'm Sarah Johnston, and I identify as a queer, transgender, poppy, parent, partner, creative organizer. I identify. And so again, I identify being a dog whistle, like I am a queer, trans, husband, partner, poppy. I don't know. So it's just these subtle twists in language and how we evolve and how we stop participating in our own oppression by othering ourselves. I don't have thoughts.
Well, we're all learning.
Yes.
You know, and when I first found out that I was gay, I thought that was my sexual preference because that was the word at the time, and that felt good. That felt like a good word. And then I found out people like to use that against us, and they say, "Oh, it's just a preference." Well, I have a preference for toast instead of muffins, so it's not anything special. And why don't you just change your preference? And why don't you just do it? And then an orientation was next, like that sexual orientation. This is how I'm oriented. Again, not quite the truth. It's just my sexuality. Why do I have to put all these other things on it? And I think the same thing has happened now with when we said preferred pronouns, it felt wonderful to be able to acknowledge my siblings who had their pronouns that didn't necessarily match the way they were appearing, and I could acknowledge that, and it was wonderful. But again, you have to think about it. It's like, but wait a minute. It's not just their preferred pronouns, it's who they are. It's who I am. It doesn't, and I think that the problem is that we often create language when we're struggling to sort of claim who we are that's not perfect, that has some problems in it. And we don't necessarily see the problems because we're so excited that we now have this great new language to talk about ourselves and our experience, and it just feels really empowering to have those words. On the last panel, you know, when one of the panelists said that they'd always been that way, they just didn't have the words to describe what was going on. Mm-hmm. But words are tricky.
Yeah.
And that sort of, so I don't know that I would personally call it internalized oppression.
Okay.
When it's just the learning process.
Sure.
But I think when the other side tries to use it against us, then it becomes clear, like, there's something, like a lot of us, social justice warrior. A lot of us want to fight for social justice.
Right.
And then the other side says, oh, those social justice warriors, they're not doing it, you know. And it's just like, so it's really thinking about, you know, how can we move together as a community, as people who are trying to put an end to all oppressions. And really, language leads to thought, leads to behaviors, leads to habits. And so if you can get the language better, and I'm not even sure it's perfect now, because do we even really want gender? I don't know. You know, like, these are things I think about, like, do we want to even, like, isn't gender over? What's up with gender? So, but, but it's just sort of like, I think there's a way that when we listen to people, we can sort of hear those dog whistles when we listen to the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. That was my deep coffee talk morning.
Was that your deep?
I've been stewing about it.
That's
and I wanted to.
a good topic.
Yeah.
That's a really good topic. And I always cherish conversations about oppressions and how we have these different systems of interlocking oppression. And I truly do believe that there is no form of oppression that is over another form of oppression, because they are all holding us down. So thank you so much for bringing that up. Now, Stephen, you're a local activist in our community, which is something that makes me
Don't act surprised.
very excited. Like, what, me? Huh?
Well, I've been doing
Activist?
anything. Oh.
So I wanted you to tell us a little bit about your activism and your passion and what drives you to do what you do and be that constructive change that we're seeing in our city.
So I think everything I learned about activism, I learned in ACT UP. And
Explain to people what ACT UP
and
is.
so ACT UP was, it started in New York in response to the AIDS crisis, but it was all over the country. And so I was I did some national actions and went to New York for some actions and went to DC. I was very involved in ACT UP Boston, because I was in Boston at the worst years. And what I learned there, I was a little bit naive. I grew up, very privileged, and I thought it was a just world. Don't be mad at me. I really thought, as a youngster, that we lived in a just world, that things would work out, that everything, the systems were set up to help us, and the government was there to make people's lives better, and that people who worked hard got rewarded. And all of this stuff that's such bullshit. But AIDS and the government response to it, and the hospitals' response to it, and the world's response to it, I just was like, this is just not right. And what that did was open a door to say, if they're lying to me about this, maybe they're lying to me about a lot of other things, like how black people are treated in America, how women are treated in America, how immigrants are treated in America, how poor people are treated in America.
All these isms,
Classisms,
yes,
how people who have different abilities are treated in America. It just was like the onion kept peeling back and peeling back. And so when I got to St. Louis, I was struck in the face, like the first week I was here, with racism. I went to look, came here, and I was going to work at the downtown office of Webster University. And I went looking downtown for a place to live. And I literally had people tell me, don't rent here. Like, not like just people on the street. The actual agent at the building where I was trying to rent said, oh, you don't want to live here. And I'm like, what do you mean I don't want to live here? It's like, this is not, you don't want to live, you don't know, you're not from St. Louis. And I was like, no, you don't want to live here. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And it was like, because I was white and everybody who lived in the building was black, as if that would be a problem for me.
And you didn't want to live on a state street.
And I didn't want, yeah, and it was just like, it was a week one education about the Del Mar Divide as I looked for a place to live and about racism in St. Louis. And while I was still sort of focusing more on LGBTQIA activism at that point, it really made me aware that St. Louis was a place where there would have to be, I would have to make race and as part of my conversation. And I'm sort of, I don't know that I, even on a Sunday, I dare say this, but I might start following the example of that sister who was up here, Sister Nancy, which if you know me, you know that's a big deal. But I have been named the fly in the ointment in the St. Louis LGBTQI community by some. And I like the idea of the sand in the isn't that shocking? No.
No.
So, but I like the idea of the sand in the oyster. I might be trying to co-opt that one myself, because I feel like one of the, before sort of Ferguson hit, the ways that I was mostly dealing with that sort of oppression and activism was really fighting some of the institutions in the LGBTQIA community here in St. Louis. Not MTUG ever. We love MTUG.
We're always room for growth.
But there were a few. It wasn't just the one who shall not be named. But the thing was, if you look at it, I only did it because I love them. I only did it because I love my people, our people. And if we are not, if white gay people, white trans people are not fighting for racial oppression, against racial oppression, for racial justice, then what are we about? Who are we? We're attacking ourselves. One of the things about being LGBTQIA is we are born everywhere. We are born in the poorest slums. We are born in the richest mansions. We are born in all colors, all religions, all races. We are everyone. And so if any one of those oppressions is happening in the world, then LGBTQIA people are oppressed. And so until everybody, and so we are like, you hear that all the time, until everyone is free, no one is free. And our community
Got to get free together.
Yeah, and our community is like the perfect example of that, because we are everyone else. There's really no one in the world who isn't part of our community.
Right.
Some part of that community is part of our community. And so to me, it's not a question of like, why be involved in activism? It's more like, why aren't you involved in activism?
Right.
It wasn't, that's sort of where I stand on it. So that's what my passion and drive is, that all people are freed from all oppression. Because until that happens, none of us are free.
Right.
I'll just say, in the 5.5 years that MTUG's been doing the work, and you've been on the online doing your agitation, and I would get kind of my hackles up, and my wife would be like, what are you all crabby about? I'm like, Stephen Holdsworth, making me crabby. And she would just gently say, you probably have something to learn from that human, right? Because I know that when my hackles come up, they come up because I am justified in the come up, but oftentimes it's because I need to learn. And so you have been a seed or a grain of sand in the oyster of my work, Stephen Holdsworth, and I appreciate that, even though it got on my nerves sometimes. I do appreciate it. I appreciate that space.
You should be on the receiving end of some of those posts.
Right, because there's always growth that needs to happen.
There's always growth.
Yes.
And one thing that Stephen and I talk about all the time is how we take different paths. But the outcome is still the same. Like, we still want oppression to stop, we want transphobia to stop, and we want everyone in our community to live their best authentic lives.
Yep.
So, Stephen will take road A, I take road B. As long as we meet at the end, that's to us all that. And people think we don't like each other, and I don't know why.
I have no idea why.
I have no idea why.
So for the record, they like each other.
We do that.
We
Let it
do like
rest.
each other. We do like each other. We work together on several projects, but people think, oh my God, I go to certain meetings.
I've heard that even at those certain meetings, there are people who like me.
Yes. I'm like, oh God. And sometimes I get ready to go to certain dinners that are held in September, and I think to myself, God, is Stephen going to be there? And if he sees me crossing this line, what will he have to say?
Yes, I'll be there.
Yes, Stephen will be there. And I'm like,
I think, here's about this. If you have been agitated by me in any way, by my Facebook posts, right now make a donation to MTUG.
Oh my God! Here we go. 24,000 right now. Here we go.
Because here's the thing. I learned so much from MTUG, the work they do, the work Sayer does. I am an old man. I mean, I could have been in the last segment with the Sage folks. But as a 50-plus gay man, I am constantly learning about trans expressive issues because it really, when I was coming up, it was not nearly as well defined and not nearly as clear. And I just have been in a constant learning process, and I'm not perfect with it. And I struggle to make sure I'm trying to stay up and know what I need to know to be a good ally. Because it's not, I try to model, I don't always succeed, I try to model that idea that if you're going to be an ally to a community you're not part of, you need to do your work. You need to not just be like constantly turning to people in that community and saying, hey, am I doing this right? What should I be doing? Give me a syllabus. That you need to sit down and do that work. And I've really tried to do that work around trans issues, around intersex issues. And it, again, but we get in these pathways, these neural pathways of, especially if it's not something that was there when you were first sort of making these ideas of what gender and sexuality were, if that wasn't like such a strong presence. And so I really appreciate the opportunity that MTUG offers in this city for people to watch, to learn, to listen to the things that MTUG is putting out and doing. So when, we wouldn't have thought of doing a documentation clinic, we wouldn't have. But as soon as I heard that was a need, and immediately I'm like, of course, like, look at what's going on in our country. We need to get these things in a row before it gets worse. And so I was like, we've got to have one here. We've got to do it. So I think, as much as I am out there protesting, I'm protesting because I do want to get to that end place. I'm doing activism not to be a pain in the butt. I know that there were many white gay men in the city who would feel differently, but I am not. It's like, and I feel like I have to do that because I'm a white gay man.
Speaking of white gay men.
Uh-oh.
Yep. Here we go.
This is like the cream of wheat stuck under my dentures.
Oof.
How do we get our gay, white, cisgender men involved? Because I get mad because you read my op-ed, I was there during the AIDS crisis. I was there during Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I organized the march when you got your butt kicked on the parking lot of the complex. I've been there since day one when you needed marriage equality. You know how many fundraisers I did for the marriage bus to get them to Iowa and then to get everything passed. But now that I need you, you haven't said a peep. So how do I get...
Beep.
No, not you, but I mean, not only our gay men, but our lesbians as well. How do we get them involved in standing in solidarity with us and protesting with us and helping us? Because I tell all my friends, you have the privilege. You can help me with your privilege. Do the things I need to do to help my trans siblings. But again, it seems to be falling on deaf ears. And you are the exception to the rule, because we've been there in many fights together. So how do I engage? Is it education? Is it throwing a temper tantrum? Is it burning down a gay bar? What do I have to do to get them?
I'm not opposed to any of those. I don't know, because shaming doesn't seem to be working as well as I'd hoped.
I did that. I did that.
But I think it is. I think it depends on the age of the person a lot. I think that the generational issues in the white gay male community, and I think for a lot of men my age and older, trans is something that wasn't really integrated in the same way when they were coming up. I was at a debate in the 80s about whether we should add the T to the community. Literally, it was a national convening where one of the workshops was, should the T be added? Because, HRC didn't start with a T and has never been very good.
It doesn't even have an I in it.
It doesn't have an I in it. Even my beloved task force didn't start with the T. They now are very good on trans issues, but they started as the Gay and Lesbian Task Force.
Right.
And in the early days, there really just was not that awareness, and so there does need to be a lot of education. And I think that is an important component in that age. I think for younger white gay men, I think that they get it much more. I think they're much more connected to the idea that we're all one community.
But it seems like right now, with the current administration and the Department of Health and Human Services trying to say transgender people can no longer change any of their documentation, I need their privilege.
Yes.
I need their help.
Yep.
I need their support, and they don't seem to. This is what I get all the time. I ask, well, we don't know what to do. We don't know what to say. Just come with me. Do something. And I just am at my wit's end on trying to, next thing I do, I have to start calling out folks by name, I guess. I don't know.
Tell them you're going to stick Steve Holsworth on them.
I think looking back at that and thinking about what we can do is all about education. That's most definitely key. And I think that it never hurts to ask what you should be doing, but you shouldn't put that emotional labor on the targeted communities and on the marginalized groups to constantly be teaching what we have to do to move forward. That's similar to what allyship is, but at the same time, knowing when you have to step forward and then take a step back. So I think it's about that delicate balance of knowing what to do.
We got deep there for a minute.
It was good.
It was good.
That's
yes.
good. Mm-hmm.
So if you're a white gay man, cis white gay man, now is the time to donate. $24,000 is what we're going for.
Open your pocketbooks.
Open
We
your
know
pockets.
you got it.
So if when you ask Diana, what should you do? When you ask Leon, what should you do? Steve Holtz is going to tell you, give money to MTUG. That's what you should do. Because you got the money, open your wallets, give it to MTUG.
I say sometimes when I stop going to dinners and stuff because it's a shame how much ridiculous amount of money is raised and then it goes to another city. And I think to myself, how could we use that $300,000 right here in St. Louis?
Come on.
That's why I'm outside. That's why I'm outside protesting and not in at the dinner.
Because they've asked me to be on their diversity committee, and I said no because number one, there's no I. If you read on their website, there's not one mention of intersex. And then someone said, well, they said something about Intersex Awareness Day. I'm like, but I'm not even a definition on their page. So we can start there. as an organization, it seems like if you get them involved, then everything else trickles down because, everyone always follows the HRC gays, most of the people that I know. So I just, like I said, I'm frustrated, and some of the trans people that I hang out with are angry because no one is saying anything when we've been there. Because we have to remember, Stonewall was started by a trans woman.
Of color.
Of color. Marsha P. Johnson. And sometimes I think people may have watched that movie Stonewall too much, and that was a whitewashing.
I protested that too.
Did you protest that? And especially with the 50th anniversary of Stonewall approaching,
Come on.
we need to do something as...
Ooh, don't get me started on Reclaim Stonewall.
Yeah.
Maybe we should get you started on Reclaim
If you
Stonewall.
don't know that hashtag, go on the social media things. I'm an old man. I do Facebook. That's about it. But go on all of them and look at that hashtag, Reclaim Pride, Reclaim Pride, Reclaim Stonewall. And there's a big push in New York. I have a number of my friends from back in the day who are like, we're done with this corporate shit at Pride. And so it's gonna go down in New York this year. And maybe in January we'll start thinking about how it might go down in St. Louis as well. But again, they have let's just say that. So HRC has been getting my ire for a long, long time, and they will continue because all of that money leaves the city and goes for their high-paid employees who steal. I'll just say it because they can sue me. Steal other people's work and slap an HRC sticker on it. So the real work is happening in places like MTUG, in small local organizations all around the country.
Yes.
That is where the real work is happening.
right.
That's what the folks who, $24,000, when you compare that to what's made at one HRC dinner, it's just like, and that money should all be going here. There's no reason for it to go anywhere else. But anyway, but Pride has actually done some things I really like in the last couple of years. You might notice I haven't been as attacking Pride lately. They're like down to number like 3 on my hit list from number 1. And the stuff that they're doing that's not the parades. Can I just say a little bit about that? About how wonderful that is. The Pride Center, the
Yes.
support groups that are offering there, the youth support, the ongoing educational activities, the openness to community activities, the gathering place, all of that, I'm just like 100% behind. And so that sort of took the edge off a little bit of how I feel about the big party. Because I love a big party. I just, like my whole thing is I just want Pride to say, this is just a big party. Like that's what we're doing. We're doing a big party. It's mostly for gay white men. And if they said that, I'd be like, okay, do the other things you do. But they say it's for all of us. They say it's for the whole community, and that's where I get a little bit like, whoa, is the whole community here? Is everybody represented? Is it accessible to everybody in the community? Is it, is what's going on? That's where I get that. Like, but I love a big party.
Okay.
I think I'm about to be kicked off.
No, we have this discussion all the time.
Yes.
And there's some of us on the Pride Board who are trying to change things.
Absolutely.
And we're at that ship is hard to steer when sometimes the leadership is not.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I would
So-
just like to acknowledge too something that's very important is there's like a learning edge and there's change that comes from conflict, and that's the only way that we can move
Right.
forward because we have different ideas,
Yep.
we have different perspectives, and that's the only way that we're going to work through this together because without each other we can't navigate this.
Right.
That's
That's
right.
all we got is each other.
That's right.
And we've
Just
been-
us.
That's what I said. It's time for us to take care of us. And us is the entire alphabet. It's not just the trans people taking care of trans people. It's the community taking care of each other. Because when you break it all down, we're one big happy family. We're one big, I'm not happy,
We're
but
one
we're
big family.
We're one big family. Because my thing is, if they'll come for me, they'll come for you. So don't think marriage equality is not on their radar, because they always start on the weakest and the weakest link and the most, like when animals prey, they prey on the weakest link. So right now they think trans people are the weakest link. But we're going to show them, oh, hell no, we are not the weakest link. And then we're going to find out and stand and fight back.
That's right.
You know, but we need help. I need your privilege to get things done.
I need you to understand
Yes.
your privilege. to
Your
get
privilege.
things
And
done.
at least acknowledge your privilege.
And use it for good.
Yeah, use
Yes.
it for good. Right. So,
Yes.
that's all right.
Yes. All right. All right. Stephen Holdsworth, thank you for sharing this space with us.
Thank you so much for having me here. I really just really appreciate everything MTUG does so much, and I really appreciate the invitation to come and chat with you and give money.
Yes.
Give
Yes.
the money now.
Give money.
Yes.
Now as it's needed. This is what you want to help. Give the money.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Stephen.
Yes.
Thank you. Yep, and you're going to do Joss, and here we go.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
All right.
All
So
right.
Sayers for another interview, and we're gonna finish off our
Upstairs.
coffee talk.
Coffee talk.
Coffee talk.
Coffee talk.
Coffee talk. Okay, and so we're gonna invite Josh and Amy to come up. Josh, I know you. I know you. Yes, get on up here, lovely human. Woo!
Oh, we got walk-on music.
I had to redo that.
I can't with you. I can't with you.
Good morning.
Good morning. See, this is why I love you. You bring like light and laughter,
my
and
God.
you just perk me up.
Well, you know, I'm not a morning person. I'm really not a morning person.
You can't tell right now.
Oh, well, you know, I have to.
Fake it till you make
I have
it.
to fake it. Yeah, you're right. Fake it till you make it.
Mhm.
And I'm really good at faking it.
Awesome.
Ask any of my ex-boyfriends.
Oh, woo! Isn't it the truth? Except for not boyfriends for me. But yeah, awesome.
Well, thank you for having us back.
No problem. So you did some poetry for us earlier in the
Yeah,
telethon.
We did some reading, some light reading.
Some light reading.
Some light reading, some heavy shading. But yeah.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, thank you for having us back. This is Amy Hart. She is joining us all the way from Olympia, Washington, if you didn't remember our first segment.
Hey, Amy.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Welcome. I see you brought some books because you don't know this, but Amy has the only trans publishing company in our country. She only publishes works by trans people.
Trans women.
Trans women.
Trans
I
women.
take that back. By trans women. So we thank you for that. So just tell us a little about your organization and the things that you and Josh are working on coming up.
Yeah, so I'm the executive director of Heart Spark Press, which is a volunteer-ran trans woman-led publishing nonprofit that publicly publishes the stories and lives of transgender girls, transgender women, and KMAB non-binary people everywhere. And we're an international organization, so our board is comprised of people from all around the world. And we are trying to make a huge change in the world so that girls like us have a voice out there.
That's amazing.
That's
So,
wonderful.
when did you first think of this concept? Like, when did it come to you? And what steps did you take to make it happen for any of our future business ventures out there?
Well, Joss and I attended the workshop hosted by Topside Press in 2016 in New York City, and
It was a trans women's writers workshop.
yes,
Yes.
the Trans Women's Writers Workshop, and a lot of us were facing the same issues with publishers, queer printers, like people who were like putting stories out there. They were routinely ignoring trans women, and especially trans women of color, because we were trans. Like, our stories were suddenly less worthy unless they fit a certain mold of, you know, born in the wrong body. If you were straight, like, the narratives had to be a very specific way. So a few of us from that workshop said that we were done. We're going to change
Become our own gatekeepers.
and become our own. Yeah.
Basically. basically becoming your own gatekeepers and helping facilitate those narratives and stories that are about your community and about your experience, and not relying on other gatekeepers who are not in those circles, in those communities, not allowing them to have power over your story.
Right, exactly. Representation is key, and it seems like that's a lot of what you're doing there, and you're making these voices and these stories visible and heard around the world, which is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, we've got a band camp, so we've tried really hard to work on accessibility. So we've got books in print, we've got books on Kindle and EPUB. All of the ebooks, all of our books are available as ebooks online, and they're pay what you want. So that way they're financially accessible. We've got a YouTube channel which has tons of videos of only
Hours of footage.
hours of footage, including this amazing human here.
I've been in front of a camera a time or two.
But the whole idea is so that we have a legacy that really speaks to the reality of us being on this planet.
And we have an amazing workshop that we are bringing to St. Louis next April.
Tell us about that workshop.
Yeah, so the workshop is going to be a collaborative project between myself, Metro Trans Umbrella Group, and HeartSpark Press. And it is going to be a trans-exclusive writers workshop for St. Louis trans writers of color, with a strong emphasis on trans women of color, and then coercively assigned male at birth, femme-identified writers of color. And it's going to be led and facilitated and organized by trans women of color writers, myself being one of the co-facilitators. So it's an idea that I have been approached by people in the community before, but I had always felt that I wasn't ready to do something like that, that, you know, there was that imposter syndrome that creeps into our minds, and I'm like, oh, I'm not that experienced, I don't know how to do it. And eventually I had kind of a realization this year where I was like, you know what, I think I am ready, because I want to give back to the community in ways that it has facilitated my growth as a trans woman writer and poet and performer in St. Louis, because with MTUG and this trans community in St. Louis, it has done so much to uplift me, my work, giving me space to share my writing. So I wanted to give that back to emerging trans writers of color here in St. Louis.
Well, I can say, you ready.
You
ready.
We ready.
You ready.
So can I come to the workshop? I don't think I know how to write a recipes.
Yeah, of course you can come to the workshop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll come to the workshop because I can write a recipe, but I may write a story or two.
You can learn how to write a book.
Yes, please.
And the thing about the workshop, we wanted accessible, so it's not. There's no fee to apply. Just submit, or attend. There's no fee to attend or to apply. We just want you to submit your application. I've been posting the application on my Facebook, Josh Spartan, but there'll also be some more social media posts and campaigning going forward in the next couple months to get the word out, to get writers applying, and yeah, it'll be April 2019.
Okay, just let us know what we can do to help get the word out and spread it out.
Yeah, you can apply at heartsparkpress.com/workshop.
heartsparkpress.com/workshop. And if you want to see more trans programming in the city, donate now, $24,000.
Yes, donate,
Because
donate.
this organization and this money being raised is helping facilitate programming like this and projects from the trans community, by the trans community here in St. Louis.
For the trans
For
community.
the trans community. So unless you're donating to MTUG, it's going to be harder for our communities to come together and do these kinds of projects in the future and create a lasting legacy of the work and the activism that we're doing for the trans community here in St. Louis. So donate.
Well, thank
Donate.
you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for coming all the way from Olympia. I was telling Josh I only know one person from Olympia, and that's my ex, so now I have a new reason to come
Yes.
and see you when I come and visit everybody up there in Washington. So thank you so much.
Thank y'all so much for having us.
It's good to have you back.
Thank you for inviting us back.
All right, so now we're going to toss it up to Sayer.
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Oh, well, we can keep talking.
Yeah, we can keep talking.
We got some more Kiki time.
All right, so
Right.
tell us a little bit about the book that you're holding right here.
Oh, okay. So these are my children's books that I've illustrated and written. They are I believe, there are hardly any children's books written by trans women for trans girls.
Right.
And I
Right.
wrote both of these books for a child in my life that needed to hear that it was going to be okay. And acknowledge the realities of being trans in 2018.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much, and we are going to.
Now we got to stretch some more. So
We gotta
Okay,
stretch
we're
some
going to stretch
more.
some more. So tell us a little bit about life where you come from up in your neck of the woods. And are there any specific programs up there for folks who identify as trans or trans expansive? And is that
Nothing like this.
Nothing like this?
No, there's
No,
not.
Heartspark is, I think, the only one right now in Olympia that's actively holding events.
Right. We also went on tour last December. This time last year, we went on tour together. Heartspark helped organize the Transsexual Empire Strikes Back tour.
Ooh, that sounds like a lot of. Were there lightsabers or?
There was a lot of fierce reading.
Okay.
There was no turfs,
Okay.
thankfully.
That's
no
good.
terps,
That's
no
good.
terps. But Heartspark was integral in the organization of that tour, which brought trans women writers from around the country and from other countries together.
Wow.
And we toured. We went to Minneapolis, Madison, Wisconsin, Chicago, and Vancouver. And
You're making your way around.
and little old me was on the tour, my first tour.
All right.
I'd never been on tour before.
And you didn't tell your mother?
I didn't tell. Well, you know. I'm sorry.
You just say, "Mama, I get around."
Well, you already know I get around. Honey. My first tour that was outside the outside Midway bus truck stop,
Right.
honey. The first one outside the Midway truck
Like
stop.
daughter, like mama. But no, we should. You know what? We should put an event on like that here in St. Louis.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because one thing I always say, I'm tired of events happening in other cities. Why? It's time that Missouri and St. Louis stop being a flyover state and city. We
Yes.
need to start having things like that here.
Yes.
Because when
Right.
you bring
Okay.
workshops and stuff like that here to St. Louis, it helps educate. It helps our visibility. It helps
And it
people.
strengthens
It strengthens,
us.
So
it
tech-
strengthens
yeah.
us.
Tech
Awesome.
stuff. It's exciting.
Well, we're gonna
and I
take
have
it and we're
zero
gonna
idea
toss
what
it up
I'm
to
really
Sarah
doing.
upstairs for another interview.
Bye.
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 That's right. That's right. My whole idea was to do it on the phone, but what's the matter? Oh, hello. Thank you. I'm here with Esper Bergman, and I'll read.
You gotta get up. You gotta get up. They gotta change the
We're
set.
going to be doing a Skype interview, and I'm going to tell you that Bear is a writer, a storyteller, an educator, an activist, and the founder and publisher of children's book publisher Flamingo Rampart, which makes feminist, culturally diverse children's picture books about LGBTQIA+ kids and families. He writes creative nonfiction for grown-ups, fiction for children. He has an advice column, Asking Bear, and was the co-editor along with Kate Bornstein of Gender Outlaws, The Next Generation. These days, he spends most of his time making trans cultural competency interventions any way he can trying to avoid stepping on Legos, which I can totally relate to. Bear. Welcome. Thank you.
Thanking at 8 a.m., whatever it is now, 8:30.
Thank you for taking your time to tell me. Yep, I can hear him. Thanks for taking your time and sharing space with us on our fabulous second annual telethon. So I want you to talk to us about the project that you're working on.
A children's picture book press that developed because there were some ways in which we felt was failing children. Most of the books that included or bi or queer or trans content were focused on a narrative of harassment, violence, isolation. And then at the end of the book, would sort of be this very milquetoast tolerance moment, and then people would decide not to the kid who was different anymore. And, you know, it began to become really clear. We probably were teaching children, actually what those books all taken together were teaching children, was that when someone comes out to you about a response, is to be horrible to them about it. So that was one problem. Another problem was that the books that were incredibly, mostly, were very boring. You know, the whole plot would be something, people have two dads, and that's not terrible. The end. Right? Which, like, thank you, that's a step. But we really began to think about what it would mean to make books that were good stuff, beautiful illustrations, adventures, mysteries, problem solving, shenanigans, tomfoolery, mess, which are the things that children actually enjoy in a children's book, and also have the queer, trans kids and families and communities in those books that are well, where everybody's well and loved and fine. Another issue is that children's literature is overwhelmingly white and overwhelming boys as main characters. And so we also thought, well, if we're going to try and make something, make it considerably better. You know, let's go the full way and really make work that represents the ways that our communities actually exist, which means ethnic diversity, cultural diversity, gender diversity, body, and in meaningful ways, not just there's like one brown kid on page 7 and we call it a day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what struck me in your first series. I mean, of course, the stories were lovely and delightful, but the illustrations were really amazing and super representational. And as both a parent and as an organizer and activist, I appreciated that reflection so much.
Well, I have a friend who is I have a lot of very smart friends. And one of them, Rabbi Danya Ruttenberg, was tweeting about Flamingo Day and said something that I thought was so smart. Let me just find it because because I thought what she said was so right on. Sorry, I didn't quite plan it. We need diverse representation, not only so every kid can see themselves